It is 1942. As World War II rages across Europe, a silent battle is being waged in the remote village of Vemork, high in the rugged Norwegian wilderness. Here, deep within an unassuming factory, is the key to a terrifying new weapon, one that could alter the course of the war and bring unspeakable devastation upon the world. The Norsk hydro plant, where an advanced method of producing heavy water, a vital component for nuclear fission, has been perfected. And as the Allies soon discover, the Nazis have taken control of this crucial facility, intending to harness its capabilities to fuel Hitler's ambitions, the development of an atomic bomb. To Winston Churchill and the Allied High Command, the prospect of the Nazis wielding such apocalyptic power is utterly unthinkable. The Prime Minister grimly declares, "We must overcome by every means at our disposal this newest and gravest threat to our survival." With time running short, an audacious plan is hatched to launch a series of daring sabotage raids to cripple the enemy's nuclear program before it's too late. However, the task of penetrating the remote, heavily guarded Vemork facility seems all but impossible. The isolated plant is shrouded in secrecy, its defenses fortified by elite Nazi forces. Any Allied operation would need to traverse hundreds of miles of hostile territory, evade German patrols, and overcome the treacherous Norwegian wilderness itself. Thus begins one of the most remarkable clandestine campaigns of World War II, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, pitting a small band of intrepid Norwegian resistance fighters and their Allied counterparts against the might of the Third Reich. As the Nazis throw every resource into protecting their nuclear prize, these heroes must draw upon every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice to sabotage Hitler's dreams. This is the extraordinary untold story of the Vemork raids, a crucial but long overlooked chapter in the Allied struggle against the Nazi oppression that ultimately destroyed Germany's final chances of victory. In the prestigious physics laboratories of pre-war Europe, a new era of scientific discovery was taking shape, one that would unleash both incredible power and unspeakable destruction upon the world. Beginning in 1938, when two Jewish refugee scientists, Otto Hahn and Lisa Meitner, made a stunning breakthrough while conducting experiments on uranium atoms in Berlin. Through a seemingly innocuous process of bombarding uranium with neutrons, the researchers had inadvertently uncovered the secrets of nuclear fission, the splitting of the atom's nucleus, and the tremendous release of energy that resulted. As news of their revolutionary findings spread, physicists immediately grasped the mind-boggling implications. If the mighty forces bound within the atom could be harnessed, an isolated nuclear chain reaction might produce enough energy to power cities. With this vital component under their control, the Uranverin forged ahead determinedly. Experiments achieved steadily higher nuclear chain reaction levels, delighting the program's military overseers. The atom's incredible power seemed almost realized. While the American program floundered, Hitler's well-funded researchers made rapid strides in nuclear fission using heavy water. By 1942, Nazi troops occupied Norway's Norsk hydro plant, one of the few facilities producing the vital heavy water catalyst. With this component securing their lead, the Uranverin achieved steadily higher nuclear chain reactions, bringing atomic power tantalizingly close. For the Allies, the threat was grave. If Germany monopolized the heavy water, they could develop apocalyptic uranium bombs. As Churchill's advisors planned countermeasures, one option emerged: sabotage the nuclear program through daring raids on the heavily defended Norwegian facility. It was a desperate gambit, but one that could cripple the enemy's dark ambitions. The stage was set for intrepid Allied operatives to strike at the heart of the ultra-secret nuclear site in an epic struggle as vital as any waged in the entire war. It was this rare heavy water, so crucial in regulating the fission process, that gave Nazi Germany an early lead in the nuclear weapons race. By spring, Nazi troops had already occupied Norway's remote Vemork plant, one of the few facilities capable of producing heavy water through an advanced electrolytic process. With this vital component under their control, the Uranverin forged ahead determinedly. Experiments achieved steadily higher nuclear chain reaction levels, delighting the program's military overseers. The atom's incredible power seemed almost realized. For the Allies, the situation grew desperate. Intelligence of ominous Nazi nuclear developments trickled back, raising dire fears. If the enemy monopolized Vemork's limited heavy water supply and completed research uninterrupted, Germany could unleash atomic annihilation. The Allied leaders dared not entertain this earth-shattering prospect. As Churchill and advisors pored over countermeasures, one daring option materialized: sabotage the enemy's nuclear ambitions by sending operatives into the Nazi-occupied Norwegian wilderness on a vital mission. Nestled amid Norway's wilderness, the unassuming Vemork industrial plant seemed an unlikely nexus of scientific developments that could alter civilization. Yet here, engineers had unlocked producing heavy water, the rare liquid key to nuclear fission. Vemork harnessed hydroelectric power to manufacture fertilizers, but pioneered electrolysis techniques to mass-produce heavy water. Secured by armed patrols, sprawling chambers processed purified water, using electric currents to distill the coveted heavy hydrogen isotopes into a precious liquid stream, the chimney smoke of the atomic age. Among Vemork's brilliant minds was chemist Leif Tronstad, whose insights refined the electrolytic heavy water extraction. Yet Tronstad possessed more than scientific genius. He had integrity. When Germany occupied Norway in 1940, he recognized the grave implications if Nazis exploited his work. Despite demands to cooperate, Tronstad adamantly refused, destroying records and dismantling equipment to stall production. His defiance made him a Gestapo target. Arrested and interrogated, he rejected betraying his work even as his family was arrested in retaliation. Ultimately deported to Sachsenhausen, Tronstad, through this tact, significantly delayed Nazi ambitions through stalwart resistance. By 1942, securing heavy water supplies was paramount for developing nuclear weapons. Both Allied and Axis scientists realized without this rare liquid moderator, achieving a self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction was impossible. Heavy water's ability to regulate nuclear fission made it a linchpin for atomic bomb research. Suddenly, the limited global stockpile took on immense strategic value as each side raced to monopolize the scarce heavy water needed to spark the first nuclear dawn. For the Allies, Nazi Germany's capture of the Vemork plant was a nightmare scenario. Allowing Hitler to corner the heavy water market could hand them catastrophic atomic supremacy on the battlefield. When Nazi forces invaded Norway in April 1940, the seemingly bucolic Scandinavian nation was quickly thrust onto the front lines of World War II. Control of Norway's craggy coasts and deep fjords offered the Third Reich sanctuaries for naval forces to disrupt Allied shipping lanes. Furthermore, its territorial waters granted access to iron ore exports from neutral Sweden, resources vital for feeding Germany's military-industrial behemoth. For the Allies, losing Norway was unacceptable. The rugged nation stood as a potential dagger aimed at the shipping lifelines between North America and Europe. As Churchill and his advisors studied countermeasures, unknown to them, Hitler's occupation forces had already turned their sights toward an unassuming industrial plant in the interior, one that could unlock terrifying new capabilities. Deep within Norway's wilderness resided the Norsk Hydro-Industrial Facility at Vemork, an unassuming chemical plant that, unbeknownst to the Allies, had achieved a revolutionary breakthrough in the production of heavy water. This rare liquid was the crucial moderating ingredient for nuclear fission chain reactions, and in 1942, Vemork was one of the only facilities in the world capable of manufacturing it on an industrial scale. Swiftly grasping the potential implications, German forces aggressively occupied the plant shortly after the invasion. Under threat of execution, they strong-armed the Norwegian scientists and engineers into repurposing the heavy water production lines in service of the Reich's own covert atomic weapons program. As Vemork's output was steadily diverted to Nazi nuclear research, it became abundantly clear to the Allies that this single remote facility could hand Hitler a decisive checkmate in the race for atomic supremacy. Among the Vemork staff was the brilliant chemist Leif Tronstad, a man whose expertise in electrolytic heavy water extraction methods made him a prized target of the occupying Germans. When he refused to cooperate despite Gestapo intimidation, the Nazis arrested Tronstad and his family in a brutal campaign of interrogations and reprisals. Somehow in the chaos, Tronstad managed to be smuggled out of Vemork before he could be deported, going into hiding among the highlands of villages surrounding the plant. There he established links with the fledgling Norwegian resistance, becoming a galvanizing voice calling for sabotage against the German heavy water production efforts. His daring escape and subversive activities marked Tronstad as among the first heroes of the coming clandestine campaign against Hitler's atomic ambitions. As news of the heavy water plant's significance spread, the stage was set for an epic campaign. As Leif Tronstad funneled intelligence from his resistance contacts to Allied commanders in Britain, a chilling reality came into focus. The heavy water production at Vemork represented nothing less than the key to Hitler's gaining the ultimate weapon of mass destruction. Tronstad's first-hand accounts of the Norsk hydro plant's operations and the horrific steps the Germans were willing to take to bring it under their control laid bare the grave implications. If the steady supply of this rare fission moderator fell into unobstructed enemy hands, it could dramatically accelerate the Third Reich's efforts to develop a working atomic bomb far ahead of the Allies. For Winston Churchill and the British High Command, this was the materialization of their darkest fears. As the Prime Minister received the latest intelligence briefs, he wasted no time in mobilizing all means necessary to sabotage the Nazi heavy water enterprise. Among the first Allied operations to counter the German efforts at Vemork was a daring attempt by Free French forces to secure Norway's limited stockpiles of heavy water before they could be captured by the Nazis. Codenamed Operation Joke, this raid saw a team of French-Norwegian commandos parachute into the Rjukan Valley near Vemork to rendezvous with local resistance. Their objective was to penetrate the facility and successfully evacuate the plant's limited inventory of heavy water byproducts. Though the raid initially succeeded in seizing the cargo, the operation quickly went awry when the commandos were engaged by German forces lying in wait. In the ensuing firefight and pursuit through the winter wilderness, the heavy water had to be destroyed to prevent its capture. While a tactical disappointment, Joke proved a sobering opening salvo that highlighted the lethality of the opposition surrounding Vemork. In the wake of Joke's failure, Churchill and his military chiefs recognized that a much larger, coordinated campaign would be required to derail the Vemork nuclear effort. The task fell to the newly formed Special Operations Executive, a clandestine corps specifically created to conduct espionage, sabotage and reconnaissance in occupied Europe. Overseen by Minister for Economic Warfare Hugh Dalton, the SOE began meticulously preparing a top-secret operation to deliver a concerted blow against the heavily defended plant itself. Codenamed Grouse, it would represent one of the SOE's first major testing grounds against the Nazi military machine. Aided by Tronstad's intimate knowledge and French resistance contacts, the operations planners formulated a multi-pronged strategy. It was a high-risk, high-reward initiative, with the fate of the war potentially hinging on its success. In late 1942, the critical first step was inserting an elite Norwegian scout team into the hostile Rjukan Valley near Vemork. Codenamed Grouse, this undertaking would prove a trial by fire. Led by Captain Joachim Ronneberg, the four-man Grouse team parachuted into the frozen wilderness in October. Their objective, to make the grueling 200-mile trek across the Hardangervidda Plateau and establish a concealed surface base to receive incoming SOE operatives. Hauling hundreds of pounds of equipment and supplies, the Norwegians battled hypothermia, whiteout blizzard conditions, and the ever-present threat of detection. On multiple occasions, they narrowly escaped German patrol sweeps. Finally arriving in January 1943, the battered but resolute Grouse team had blazed the path for the impending Allied strike. With Grouse team's safe passage secured, Britain planned an audacious glider assault to deliver elite saboteurs into the heart of Vemork. On November 19, 1942, a mass formation of glider transports took off from England, wooden holds packed with demolition teams, equipment, and a disassembled glider. After an epic 1,000-mile flight, survivors crash-landed on Hardangervidda, only to find Grouse's base compromised and evacuated. In bitter sub-zero temperatures, the stranded demolition teams were quickly engaged by overwhelming German patrols. Though fighting valiantly, their supplies were inadequate. After a desperate firefight, most were captured while others perished. Freshmen had ended in total failure. The catastrophic outcome dealt a sobering blow tactically and in lost Allied lives. An inquiry censured planning and resupply failures contributing to the disaster. However, Grouse's Norwegian scouts' bravery inspired Churchill and SOE to persist. As they regrouped, a harsh truth emerged. Disrupting German nuclear efforts required extraordinary ingenuity, stealth and sacrifice deep behind enemy lines. The Vemork sabotage road ahead promised only escalating risks and higher stakes. In the wake of the freshman disaster, the SOE knew their next attempt to cripple the Vemork nuclear threat demanded nothing less than complete strategic overhaul and seamless execution. And no one was more crucial to making their new Operation Gunnerside a success than Leif Tronstad himself. The former Vemork chemist, having narrowly escaped the Gestapo's clutches, became the centerpiece of Gunnerside's planning and preparation phases. At a secluded SOE training facility, Tronstad provided intimate details on the plant's layout, defenses, and, most importantly, its critical weakness. Working tirelessly with the hand-picked Norwegian commando team, including the Grouse veteran Joachim Runneberg, Tronstad coached them exhaustively. From recreating the facility's exterior to conducting mock demolitions, his first-hand expertise was vital to overcome the slightest marginal error that could spell doom for the high-risk mission. As the weeks of intensive training wore on, Tronstad's unique insights galvanized the team's confidence and determination to succeed where others had failed in striking at the heart of Hitler's nuclear ambitions. Finally, in the late hours of February 16, 1943, Gunnerside was launched from the UK aboard a Halifax bomber to penetrate deep into the frozen, hostile Rjukan Valley. After parachuting amidst whiteout conditions, the 9-man commando team, led again by the unflappable Runneberg, embarked on an epic 2-day cross-country ski traverse while hauling their supplies and equipment through the sub-zero wilderness. Evading German patrols at every turn, the Norwegians finally reached their target in the early morning darkness of February 28th. While half the team provided covering fire, Runneberg led the demolition crews into the heavily fortified Vemork facility itself. Moving with surgical precision, they successfully planted the explosive charges on the heavy water reactor chambers and made their escape just as the Germans responded. In a thunderous volley of smoke and fire, Gunnerside had at last succeeded, completely demolishing the interior of the heavy water plant and obliterating its ability to produce the vital fissile components for the enemy's atomic experiments. Undeterred by setbacks, the Nazi High Command relocated Vemork's heavy water production to secure underground facilities deep within the Reich. In a meticulously coordinated winter 1944 undertaking, German engineers systematically evacuated every component via rail and truck convoys, leaving nothing behind at the besieged valley. The destination was an extensive subterranean network near Czechoslovakia, where work could continue uninterrupted. While the Allies had temporarily disrupted progress, Vemork itself was no longer viable. Hitler's atomic dreams persisted, perhaps made resilient by their nomadic rebirth. With prospects of another risky ground infiltration remote, SOE and American intelligence controversially turned to aerial bombardment using the US Army Air Force's power. Though the Gunnerside raid had dealt a major blow to the Nazis' nuclear ambitions, Hitler's regime was far from defeated on this vital front. With grim determination, the Führer immediately ordered the reconstruction and reinforcement of the devastated Vemork heavy water plant at any cost. Drawing on stockpiles of spare equipment and materials, the Germans raced to churn out new electrolytic chambers to replace those lost in the attack. By late 1943, the heavy water reactor lines had been painstakingly restored, and Vemork's precious outflow was once again making its way to the nuclear research centers across occupied Europe. For the Allied commanders, this resilient resurrection of the enemy's uranium quest was an ominous development, one that called for increasingly desperate countermeasures. Operation Rowdy commenced in November 1943 as B-17 waves unleashed explosives on production and infrastructure targets, guided by Gunnerside intelligence. Initial attacks showed signs of hobbling heavy water output. However, imprecise bombardments severely impacted civilians in Rjukan as unintended casualties mounted from missed residential ordnance, stoking outrage from resistance groups appalled at innocent lives lost. While Rowdy continued into 1944, its efficacy and morality were increasingly questioned, underscoring Allied desperation to forestall terrifying Axis atomic superiority implications. Undeterred by Allied offensives targeting Vemork, Nazi High Command relocated the entire heavy water operation to secure underground Reich facilities. In a meticulously coordinated winter 1944 undertaking, German engineers systematically disassembled, crated and transported every Vemork component via rail and truck convoys, leaving nothing behind at the besieged valley. By early 1944, Allies confirmed Germans were close to an atomic weapon despite sabotage efforts, with heavy water production safely evacuated underground. In a desperate gambit, Norwegian saboteur Knut Haukelid hatched an audacious plan to strike the last heavy water cargo before reaching its destination, no longer placing limits on justifiable actions after witnessing Rjukan's bombing. Haukelid meticulously orchestrated an assault on the Nazi ferry SF Hydro, transporting 70 tons of concentrate across Lake Tinsjö, covertly planting explosive charges timed to detonate during the crossing. If successful, the attack could deal a final crippling blow to the Nazi nuclear program. On February 20th, 1944, Haukelid's operation struck as the SF Hydro transited frozen waters. Explosions ripped open the ferry's hull, transforming it into a sinking coffin laden with irreplaceable heavy water cargo. Within minutes, it slipped beneath the surface, consigning remaining stock and nearly 700 Norwegian and German casualties to the depths. This staggering loss crippled Hitler's nuclear program, severing the moderator supply for critical experiments. While underground facilities sustained minimal damage, the heavy water loss spelled doom for atomic bomb hopes before the Reich's capitulation, striking the final blow against Vemork's legacy. Haukelid's unilateral ferry sinking decisively impacted the war, but extracted massive civilian casualties, sparking ethical outrage among Allied leaders despite preventing greater Nazi atrocities. To hardliners, the loss was a tragic cost, but to others like the Norwegian resistance, it crossed unnecessary brutality. Haukelid's trial saw defense as patriotic hero and condemnation as war criminal. The SF Hydro incident crystallized blurred moralities and nuclear desperation plaguing both sides. The solace was averting further deployments, though ethical shockwaves reverberated after war's end regarding the disproportionate toll. The cumulative impact of the Norwegian sabotage campaign, spanning from the gunner-side demolition of Vemork to the controversial sinking of the SF Hydro ferry, proved absolutely devastating to Germany's pursuit of nuclear weapons capabilities. By the time American forces finally overran and captured the underground nuclear facilities in the waning days of the war in Europe, the teams of scientists had made considerable theoretical advances. However, chronic shortages of the crucial heavy water moderator had stymied their ability to accomplish a critically sustained nuclear chain reaction. With stockpiles exhausted and production irreparably crippled, the once promising German program had effectively been neutralized before it could approach the final threshold of weaponization. The immediate threat of a Nazi atomic bomb being unleashed had been undeniably averted through the extraordinary sacrifices at Vemork. Yet even as the Allies celebrated the downfall of Hitler's nuclear ambitions, troubling controversies and contradictory evidence emerged regarding just how close the enemy had truly progressed towards achieving atomic weapons in the first place. Post-war interrogations of key scientists like Werner Heisenberg produced first-hand accounts stating the German program had not only fallen hopelessly behind the Manhattan Project in technological development, but that creating a viable fission device had never been their express intention. Such revisionist perspectives flew in the face of earlier dire American and British intelligence assessments that had kick-started the entire campaign against the heavy water production at Vemork. They sparked a furious historical debate over the true extent of the nuclear threat from the Third Reich, and whether the extraordinary measures taken had simply been a catastrophic overreaction to limited scientific research. To this day, scholars remain divided over the actual capacities and motives behind Nazi Germany's atomics program. While the veracity of Hitler's nuclear ambitions may be historically disputed, one indelible truth remains. The clandestine operations to disrupt Germany's heavy water production at Vemork granted the Allied scientists and Manhattan Project precious time to outpace their Axis counterparts in the race towards the world's first atomic bomb. Each delay, every disruption in the flow of fissile materials from the embattled Norwegian wilderness allowed the massive American program to forge ahead unimpeded in their top-secret research at Los Alamos. The brilliant minds at the vanguard of this new atomic age, Oppenheimer, Feynman, Teller, were able to take the lead and cross technological hurdles one after another. So, while the fearless Norwegian commandos may have never fully comprehended the implications of their struggle, their bravery and sacrifices buying time became a decisive factor in the Manhattan Project's success. The dawn of the nuclear age was altered because of the battle at Vemork. In the years following World War II's conclusion, the incredible feats and sacrifices of the Norwegian resistance fighters who disrupted Hitler's nuclear ambitions at Vemork finally garnered the recognition they deserved. At the forefront was the scientific brilliance and moral courage of Leif Tronstad. Despite his deportation and torture at the hands of the Gestapo, Tronstad's integral role in advising and training the Allied sabotage teams was celebrated as indispensable to their audacious successes. He was awarded Norway's highest honors of heroism, alongside operatives like the indomitable Joachim Rønneberg, who led the daring Gunnerside demolition raid. The bravery and patriotism exemplified by these unsung warriors of Telemark was deeply admired across the Allied nations that had prevailed against the Axis threat. Their names had become inextricably linked to the downfall of German nuclear development through a campaign of inspirational clandestine resistance. Beyond the well-deserved accolades, the extraordinary Vemork campaign also provided invaluable tactical lessons that resonated profoundly with the burgeoning special operations communities in the post-war era. The intricate infiltrations, precision demolitions, and tenacious survival skills displayed by the Norwegian operatives soon became foundational doctrines for elite military units. The harrowing experiences and hard-won knowledge from the likes of Operation Grouse, Freshman, and Gunnerside imbued an appreciation for the criticality of intelligence gathering, thorough training, preparation, and careful contingency planning. Even hard-learned failures like Freshman's disastrous glider insertion fostered refinements in airborne delivery tactics. The heroic legacy of Telemark's saboteurs was continually revisited for its insights into the hallmarks of successful special forces operations: daring, self-sacrifice, and unwavering resolve in the face of near-impossible odds against a ruthless, unforgiving enemy. While the incredible campaign to sabotage German nuclear development at Vemork is still lesser known compared to other pivotal World War II's episodes, its overall significance to the war's resolution cannot be overstated. The extraordinary collective efforts of the Norwegian resistance, Allied intelligence services, and heroic commandos fundamentally disrupted Hitler's ability to deliver the ultimate battle-winning weapon. Had the intervention against heavy water production faltered or failed completely, even a marginally successful atomic bomb test could have drastically altered the complexion of the entire European theater. In this light, the heroes of Telemark take their rightful place among the most impactful and brilliantly executed special forces operations in modern military history.